All right. Welcome to another DFW Running Talk. I am Chris Detzel, and today we have Megan Smyth on. Megan, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. You just got done running 175 miles in 42 hours
Mhm.
at a really cool race. It's called the Summit Backyard Ultra. Is that right?
That's right. Down in Marble
All
Falls.
right. We're going to get into that race later, but 175 miles just in, I say one day, but it took you 20 or 42 hours, which is kind of crazy anyways. So that just tells us what kind of runner you are already. But Megan, I would love to get to know you a little bit about, your journey in running, how you got it started and those kinds of things. And then I'll just kind of ask questions from there.
Perfect. Well, I kind of like to say that I've had two completely separate running lives.
Oh,
The first started in middle school and went up through 2+ years of college
okay.
when I was primarily a track runner, believe it or not, who did cross country. My forte was actually the 800 meter. So, I love the
Tough
pain,
one.
but I used to love it in really short bursts and think that
Yeah.
anything over
Not for a
that
long time.
is awful. But as often happens, in college, I got a little injured, I got a little burnt out, and I stopped running completely for 5+ years before I found an amazing social run group who still a lot of my best friends are from that group. And yeah, they kind of got me back into it in 2010.
We talk,
And
it's funny is on these podcasts, we talk a lot about the community and how much of an influence that becomes, right? You get people
True.
kind of interested and you sound like you've already been slightly interested, but 5 years took a time off, but then the community kind of helped in that, I guess, right?
Absolutely. I think it was tough. After I stopped running, I got really out of shape and
Yeah.
because I was doing nothing. I mean,
Mhm.
not only did I stop
A
running,
lot
I
of
was
us.
doing absolutely nothing, but I had never had to watch what I ate at all because I had
Yeah.
always been running insane distances. I mean, maybe not insane distances, but insanely hard workouts and, a lot of
Well,
miles.
insane compared to what you do today is kind of, you know,
Right. Well, relative.
it's relative.
But yeah, so I mean, it was really tough to get back into it because I got very out of shape, but also because to me it had always been a social activity. I had always been on a team. So it had always been with people. It had always been something that was with friends in addition to being good for you. So when it came to trying to do it by myself, I really struggled with
That's interesting.
getting motivated to get back out there.
We didn't have a coach telling you what to do. You just,
Right.
you know,
I had no, I had nothing other than the knowledge that I really needed to start moving again
yeah.
because things were getting bad.
Yeah.
And then just I think at the time, I didn't even realize that social runs were a thing. I knew about running teams and,
Yeah.
serious running and club running, but I really didn't realize that there were just people who met up and did 3 to 5 miles on a Wednesday night.
So let's back up a little bit because
Yep.
I want to kind of get back. You went to college. Were you running like, was it like a 5K or 4 miles or, what was that? You said 800. So you were doing kind
I
of
mean,
really
I
fast
I
stuff.
did run with the cross country team,
Okay.
but really my focus was track. So I was still
Okay.
doing say the 800 meter
That's
there.
fast. I mean, like, that's a kind of a speed. I mean, as I think about it.
It definitely is, especially now. I think
Yeah.
anything under 5K now, I'm like, oh, that's way too fast. I want no part in it. Like too
I never
much.
find 5K is really difficult, from a speed
Terrible.
standpoint. I feel like it's like a
That's the worst
sprint.
distance, I think.
I know.
Oh, it's such a sprint, but it's a really long sprint. It's awful. I
Yeah. I
don't
feel
do
like a half marathon is, let's say easier, but I can deal with that because I can just get into a groove. 5K, I'm like dying from
yeah.
mile one.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. That middle range is kind of just the worst. It's like in my early life, I was like, okay, track, but I really don't want to do anything more than 800. And then in my later life, I'm like, oh,
mhm,
ultras are nice because you can go very slowly. You just have to do it for a really, really long time. And yeah, it's that
a
that
really
5K
long time.
is the worst, I think. The
I
hardest, one
agree.
of the hardest,
I agree.
really.
All right. So 2010, you're like, okay, I need to start moving again. It's been
Yeah.
several years.
So pure luck. I actually went with a friend, unrelated to running, to the Pocket Sandwich Theater, which
Yeah.
used to be at Mockingbird.
Yeah. I
And
know. I've been there. It's
yeah,
awesome.
happened to be at a time that a big group of runners was meeting right outside of what was Run On at the time.
Yeah.
and now Fleet Feet, I thought, oh, I wonder what these people are doing. I would really love to get back into it. So I
Mm.
looked on their website and saw that they had a Wednesday night social run.
Okay.
So the next week, I just showed up on a
Showed up.
Wednesday, not knowing anyone, and was immediately greeted by the woman who was in charge of it at the time, Tracy Cooper,
Mhm.
who bonded with me immediately because I knew who Mike Madonna was. And she was very frustrated that some of the other runners there didn't. And
Everybody knows who he is. I mean, should.
so,
I
but
mean, hello.
yeah.
Hockey
So,
player, Dallas Stars, the
Like,
best. Anyways,
yeah, that was so. So I was accepted since I knew Mike Madonna. And yeah, actually,
just
from then on,
accepted.
I pretty much I started running with them most Wednesdays, and then they started kind of pulling me in, like, "Oh, you should come to a lake loop. You should come, you should
Yeah.
come to this." And eventually, it became you should train with the actual classes that run out of
Yeah.
Ronan. At first, I said no. I did the morning running thing. I don't want to do
Doing
it
plenty.
anymore. I am not a morning person naturally. I
Yeah.
did that for college. I did, and so, but
Still
eventually,
going back to college days, Megan. That seems kind of a, I don't want that.
yeah, it was a bit of a breaking point in my
Uh-huh.
running. But I was convinced eventually, and I said, well, if I'm training for something, I'm just going straight to the marathon. I'm not going to
Mm.
bother with half training, because if I'm getting up early,
No
I
half-ass. No way to do that, damn
yeah,
it.
if I'm bothering to get up early to go to these classes, I'm just going to jump into marathon training. And in hindsight, that was probably not the best idea, because the first
Yeah.
several weeks I would get to 10 miles for the long run, die. I mean,
Yeah, of course.
just collapse. I just could not get past 10 miles. And I was
And that's
probably,
kind of where they start, is 10 miles for a long run, right? Short run.
yeah. So basically, the long run every week was killing me. And
Yeah.
I thought, why did I sign up for this? How am I ever going to make it through a marathon? And then we got lucky. That was 2011, and it was a really cold winter.
Yeah.
And there was ice one day, and it made the group slow down just enough that I could finally actually keep up with them at a slightly more normal pace, the pace they were technically supposed to be running, but were not most days.
Yeah.
And it was like a switch just flipped, and
Huh.
all of a sudden I ran 14 miles that day and felt okay. And from then on, it was still hard.
Sure.
It was hard building up mileage,
It was doable.
but I didn't die on runs anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
and then I ran my first marathon in Oklahoma City that May. It was
That
my
used to
very
be a
first.
really popular race for, like, I've run Dallas Running Club since 2014. And that was a real popular race for people for the first several years when I was there. So how'd you do?
I mean, better than expected.
Okay.
It ended up being a very cold and rainy day, which is actually way more my forte than hot, I think, or at least especially at the time.
Marathon's always really difficult.
Oh, so hard. So, and it was at one point when I looked 2 weeks out, which, rookie mistake, never looked 2 weeks out. It was supposed to be a high of 90 that day.
Nice.
And
Get in
I
your
thought,
mental space
oh
quickly.
yeah, I thought, I'm not going to make it. There's no
Yeah.
way. We haven't even been running in those temperatures. And then a
Mhm.
front came in, and instead it was delayed 30 minutes for lightning. And it was like in the 30s. It hailed on people at the end of
Yeah.
the
Wow.
So complete switch. But yeah, I ended up with a 3:39.
That's
So,
my best. That was my first marathon as well.
oh, really? That's so
Yeah.
funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hey, very solid. Very solid first
It's a
marathon.
very solid,
I was
marathon. for
thrilled. I was
first.
going for a 3:45. So that was faster than my goal even, and I was honestly shocked, but finished it and thought, okay, you know what? That wasn't as bad as I thought. And I
We're kind of
think
hooked a little bit now,
I did.
So
Yeah.
it's just,
Okay. I think it'd probably go faster, but it was kind of fun. So the very next day, pretty much, I signed up for the Goofy at Disney with some friends the next January. But then I ended up doing another one that fall in Tulsa as well. So yeah, from then on, I kind of
did 3 that year. So
Yeah, I did. Well, yeah, then 3 in the first year. And
Oh.
yeah,
that's
no,
great.
just
So
from then on,
you
I,
start running
my
the
second
marathon.
running started.
Say it
Sorry.
again.
I said,
No,
yeah,
no, no.
then at the start of my second running life, as I
Yeah,
do it.
started your second run of life and you haven't stopped. Is that right? Or
Right, yeah, been pretty much running, training marathons and up ever since.
so, okay, fair enough. All right. So now you're a marathon runner. And you did 3 your first year. So as you kind of fast forward a little bit, and I don't know how much you've run Boston, right? Which is always kind of the
I've
pinnacle of,
run it
marathoners.
four times.
Okay. All right. And did you ever do like the try for the 6 stars, or you just went to Boston? What was your thinking around all of that?
I've done Chicago and New York, but I haven't done any of the international races yet. It's I have kind of a long list of potential goals,
Yeah.
and that's maybe one of them, but not quite as high on my list as some other things. So
Yeah. And okay. So you've run Boston 4 times, and how did you like that? The first time. Tell me a little bit before that. Like, were you trying to get into Boston? All that kind of stuff.
honestly, so the first marathon I ran, that one in Oklahoma City, was technically a BQ because at the
Oh,
time the times were
okay.
slower and my time was 3:40, but it was
Got it.
only a BQ by a matter of seconds. So I
Uh,
didn't actually get in. But at the time, I wasn't even really aware. That was
You
not
didn't,
really on
you
my
didn't even
radar
know.
for a first
Yeah.
marathon. But then the second one I ran that fall in Tulsa was faster. So by that time, I'd been around runners enough to know, like, oh, this is a
What
thing.
Boston is, yeah.
Should
This is
probably
this is
we're
important.
gonna do this.
Yeah.
So I did end up using. Well, actually, I think I ran one even a little faster than that the next year in Colorado. So then I ended up using that and got in. And so my first Boston was 2013,
Wow. Okay.
which obviously was the bombing year.
Yeah.
So
How
that
did
was
that tell me about that? Because I have a friend at that time. He was running Boston, or somebody I was working. He was one of my customers, right? And he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna run Boston the first time." And he told me and that was 2013 with the bombing and everything. And he said it was insane, and like he couldn't find his family for a while because they were supposed to be cheering. The phones were off, and all this crazy stuff. So
it was crazy. I got very lucky in that. I mean, I had been running it just for fun.
yes,
So I was running it fairly slowly, but I had been in a high enough corral that I had finished a while before it happened. But I had just found my husband maybe 2 or 3 minutes before that in the family meeting area. So luckily we weren't trying to find each other still. We were together when it happened. And it sounded like the loudest clap of thunder you've ever heard,
ooh,
but you looked up and the skies were blue, like purely blue. So you knew
yeah,
it wasn't thunder. And at first I thought, okay, maybe a transformer blew. You don't immediately go to terrorist attack, of
of
course.
course
But then
not.
when the second one went off and you started hearing sirens, you knew something really bad had happened. So
Yeah.
my husband said, okay, I'm sorry. I know you just ran a marathon, but we need to get out of here.
Let's run.
Sure. Yeah, so pretty much. I mean, we just took off, but at
Yeah,
that point, everyone on the street was still trying to figure out what happened because
yeah.
people right there hadn't seen it, and it was
Did you go
actually
right to the hotel, or
we did. So we were luckily staying a little ways away, just in this small place in the back bay. So ours, it wasn't blocked off; it was unaffected, really. So we were able to go back and just pretty much spent the rest of the weekend hiding out in the hotel room, watching the television, figuring out what happened. But the first person, do you know Martina Krevkor by chance? She's a Dallas runner as well, but
okay?
she was the one, she saw us on the street and she was the first one who said it was a bombing.
Wow.
And so at that point, I'm trying to tell my husband, like, hey, put something on Facebook so that anyone who sees it,
Yeah.
back in Dallas or in the wider world knows that we're okay. And of course, he at the time didn't even know how to tag someone on Facebook. So it's trying to do that as we're walking back to the hotel. But it was crazy. And my mom actually, she worked at a high school at the time, and my sister was living in Seoul, South Korea. And I guess
Ooh.
someone came into my mom's office and said, "Oh, I heard about the bombing. Is your daughter okay?" And my mom thought something had happened in Korea, like in South Korea with the North
She's
Koreans.
fine.
And so she starts saying, "Oh, did something happen in Seoul?" And she said, the person said, "No, I'm talking about Boston." So yeah, it was, I mean, very surreal, I think, for everyone that
I
there.
can
Just
imagine. I mean, I knew a few people running it, of course, but just being there and just having to experience it. And luckily, most people were okay, but there were a lot of people that weren't, you know?
yeah. It was awful. I mean, once we figured out what happened, yeah, just thinking about, yeah, the people that were right there. I mean, it was mostly the spectators were the ones that got the
Yeah.
most injured, and a few runners as well. And I mean, just horrible. And
That is
I
crazy.
think it spoke very well of the running community, though, that everyone, I think, instead of being scared, everyone wanted to go back to Boston even more after that. I knew so many people that said, well, now I have to run it again, or I have to make it for the first time to show my support. And it really brought runners
It,
together even more than they already are, which it's a pretty tight-knit community to begin with.
it is. And then, especially in Dallas, I mean, you're seeing it become more and more, you see more and more runners. I was just talking about this the other day on a Christmas run. Like, there's more and more groups that are more separated, right? Like, you have different, some in Rowlett, some in Rockwall, Dallas, Fort Worth. I mean, they're just everywhere now. Back in, you know, 2014, 13, 12, whatever, there were just big groups in general, right? Like, or Run On would have a group, or Luke's would have a group. And so those are the ones that you would have to, now they're just everywhere. So,
Oh, yeah. There's so many separate groups.
yeah, I mean, I try to keep up with them, like 30 or 40 that I know of, and I'm sure there's more in DFW. So it's funny that you mentioned that. So my wife, Leah, has been going to Boston ever since, from 2014 until now. I think
Okay.
she's done 11, I guess is the number. Maybe she didn't go 13 though. So maybe, I don't know the exact number, but I know she's at 11-ish going back again. So,
It's amazing. So she got the 10 streak. So she,
oh yeah,
she runs
she's
a
already got the
qualifier.
10
She
streak.
gets the auto in. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
Kieran.
Yeah.
Kieran has gotten his 10 plus
No,
streak
well,
run.
funny, they're both doing Boston and then going to London.
So insane. Yeah,
I
I
was
have
like,
2 girls doing that. I mean, I love it as someone who
of course you
is a
do.
little bit of a
We'll get into
for
your
punishment. I think fun, but
all the punishment you've taken here shortly. And again, you've done 4 Bostons, and so did you go the next year, or did you wait a little while?
the funny thing is I actually hadn't run a qualifier for the next year
Oh,
just because, I'd run, like I said, I was doing Boston just for fun. And so I didn't go back in 14, but I went back in 15.
got it.
And then I went back in 17
Yeah.
because I'd run a fast time and I wanted to go. But then after that, I really loved running a lot of different races. So I just kind of said, I'm not going back to Boston for a while. I'll run different things in the spring. And also in 16 is when I started really getting more into ultras.
Well, let's talk about that.
Some of the
So
marathons.
did you run
for my 40th?
Say it again.
I went back to Boston this past year for my 40th.
Oh, okay.
So.
Got it. For your 40th birthday?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I know.
I'm turning 50 this next year, so I'll have to do something special. I was thinking about actually running another marathon. It's been 10 years since I've run a marathon. I mean, I've done some 50Ks-ish, and I've done, we like to go do these mountain runs, like at the 6-day trip. There's those things, Trans Rockies. We've done a couple, 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, I'm so sad that it's not going to be around anymore. I haven't done it. I did their Moab run last year.
Yeah,
their 3 days.
That was fun.
It was really fun. It was gorgeous. But I never got to do Trans Rockies. I'm sad.
Trans Rockies is a lot of fun, but it does feel, it felt a little cliquish, right? And then, but it was fine. I mean, it was still a great experience. And my recommendation is that you go with somebody if you're going to do something like that, so that you can have somebody to talk to.
That's what we did in Moab. We had a whole group.
Yeah.
We had about 6 people from Dallas that went. And so it was
a lot easier that way.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I mean, it was, in the woods, they take, how it is, they take all your stuff, but you had to sleep in tents and all these things. And you could do a 25 miler that day, up in the Colorado mountains, or, maybe it's 18, or even the 13 in Leadville was extremely difficult.
Oh, so, I'm sure. Yeah. So, I've only done one race that you would really consider at altitude. And
yeah,
that's no joke, especially coming from down here. It's rough.
So you got into trail running first. I'm sure you just didn't, maybe you did since you just did the marathon, but did you get into the ultra first, or did you do a few trails and think, oh my gosh, I got to get into?
So I had some friends that I met really through the marathon training that also did trails. Okay. So they kind of started getting me to come out on whatever day of the weekend we weren't doing a road run. Yeah. They said, oh, come to North Shore very often. Sometimes Cedar Ridge, but more North Shore, and just run on trails and then hang out and drink some beer, eat some snacks. It was just a very fun, relaxed
environment
run and group, and and I just kind of fell in love with it. And a couple of them had done some ultras, so it was kind of one of those where gradually I thought, well, I mean, a 50K, that's only 5 miles more than a marathon. How bad could it be? So. I mean,
not too bad. I find that I kind of find the 50Ks can be a little bit easier than the marathons, from a mental.
I think so, especially on the trails, because you're not so worried about every single mile pace. You're not constantly looking at your watch like, did I hit a 7:30? You're just
Mm-hmm.
going by feel a lot more, which is one of my favorite things about trails. They're just,
Same.
yeah,
I
it's
mean, I like to go
can't really
fast if I can, but
compare. You
yeah,
can't really compare course to course. They're all completely different, so you're not as worried about your
100%.
exact time. It's nice. So yeah, my first 50K I did up in Tulsa, which is where I
Okay.
grew up, and I did it so slowly. I was so paranoid about it being an
Like,
ultra, and I did not want to
oh,
go too
okay.
fast. So I took it so easy. I can't remember what my time was, but it was
You
painfully slow. But I finished, and it was fun. And so after that, I thought, okay, well, I could do a 50 miler.
so then you did your first 50K when?
15.
Okay. So
No,
you are
yeah,
pretty early.
26.
I mean, pretty early you got into, I mean, 5 years or 4 years later,
4 years.
right?
Yeah, about 4 years after my first marathon.
Just wasn't enough. So 50K it is. And then you thought, okay, well, I could do a 50 miler. When'd you do that?
Mhm. So Rocky
Mhm.
in 2016 was my
Okay.
first 50 miler, and it went really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I still had a lot to learn about nutrition. That
Yeah.
becomes so essential in an ultra. So definitely was one of those where some aid station workers rescued me when I was cramping up. It was mile
Mhm.
38 or 42 or something, and I was cramping
So
up.
close, but
You had any banana? I'm like, I've not. It's like, try a banana.
try banana,
And then I was like, hey, bananas are good. I guess I should eat more of this.
some food.
Get some food, yes, which is, I have since learned, that's my advice. Anyone who asks, oh, well, what's the one piece of advice you'd give for my first ultra or for this longer thing? Eat. If you
Yeah.
start to get in your head and you're feeling depressed about it, if your legs start cramping up, if the music just isn't hitting right, eat food. It's almost always calories, and just
100%.
give it 20 minutes and you'll feel miraculously better. So,
How do you, so you did your 50 miler. Did you
mhm.
think of obviously you weren't thinking too much of nutrition that much. I mean, did you have Rocky? It's loops, having somebody there maybe is important, but it's not as important if it was a out and back or if it wasn't an outback.
I mean, I had some friends there that would see me a couple places, but I think for the most part, I just thought, okay, there are aid stations. I had done some shorter ultras as well, some 30K Captain
Thinking of those.
Carl's and things like that.
Oh,
So, I mean,
some
I
of
knew
those are
about aid
hard.
stations. I knew they had those are that they're fun. But yeah, I mean, I knew kind of what to expect in terms of food. I think I just didn't really realize how much I needed to eat and how essential it was. Because in a road race, you can survive on gels. And even in a 50K, you can largely survive on gels. Yeah, it's still you eat a little solid food, but
You get tired of
yeah,
those. I know
yeah,
it.
you do. You get tired of them, and it's not ideal, but you can get away with it for a 50K, especially a faster one. But once you get to 50 mile, I think that's where it really switches to a
Solids.
completely different mindset, and you really need to be eating some solid food. And yeah, I think I learned a lot, and then I did a 50 miler again in the fall at Dino Valley. It was
Yeah.
supposed to be a big cedar, and that was the very first year
Mm,
that it switched to Dino Valley because they were having all those weird land dispute issues at Big
yeah.
Cedar. I think you talked to Libby about
Yeah,
that.
I did. I did.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's one of Libby's races, right? So
Yeah, yeah. And so I said, okay, if this 50 miler goes well, I'm going to sign up for a 100 miler. And I
mm,
ended up winning it for the women, at least at the Dino Valley one.
that's awesome.
I was like, okay, I guess that counts as going well. So
And
I,
so wait, let's back
I
up.
was,
All right, because I think this is important because you're very fast. I mean, you've gone to Boston, and so that obviously over time translated to a little bit of speed on the trails as well. You won it, so I mean, there's some speed there. But when you think of nutrition, so let's talk about training for a 50 miler.
okay.
The first time you did it, what was that like? And then the second time you did it, what was that like?
The training
Yeah, as you kind of
aspect.
think about like your mileage, did you do speed work or was it all, I don't know, like
So to be honest, when I started running ultras, I pretty much still just trained like I was training for a
marathon?
marathon,
Yeah.
but just also added a trail day. I mean, it was pretty
Okay.
much no different. I would run with my marathon training group during the
Yeah.
week
Makes sense.
and usually for the road long run as well. And then I would just add a day of trails. And that was,
Day like 12 miles or something or 10.
yeah, it just would depend. I mean, sometimes only 8 or 10, sometimes all the way up to 20, just kind of depending on what the
That's
road run was. But I really didn't run super high mileage at first. I think even for most of my hundreds, I would be mostly running in the 40s and 50s and peak around 65,
Okay.
which is pretty low for an ultra, but I was still doing some speed work in there. I think in the last year and a half or so, especially what leading into the first backyard ultra I did, I decided it would be a good idea to try some higher mileage. So lately I've been more in the 60s and 70s and peaking in the 80s, which
You
I
know,
think has served me well. But
I mean, I would think so, so that makes complete sense. I know for me, like, if I'm hitting just too many miles, and when I say too many, it's look, 40 is probably my max-ish. I can go hit a 50 maybe every now and then in a while, but I start getting injured. Like if I can't do 250, 300 miles ever, in a month. I just can't. My body just doesn't allow it.
Mhm. I think, I mean, some of it is luck. Some of it is just how many years I've
Yeah.
been running at that decent mileage range before I started to bump up to a higher mileage. But I also think I'm good at listening to my body just after so many years of running. And if something is bothering me, I'll try to switch it up, or I won't do as much speed that week, or I'll back off a little bit.
Well, speed will get
So
to you. The older you get, that's when you start feeling it in your mid to late, maybe early 40s. But for me, it was more mid to late. And my body's just like, you could do speed work, but not maybe once a week. You know what I mean? Like, or,
I
something like that. Once a month, I can
yeah,
run a race or whatever, but don't kill yourself.
I definitely don't overdo it on the races. Speed work, I think, and I've decided I can get away with 2 days a week for the most part, like a track or a tempo on Tuesday, and then either something Thursday or more often something built into the long run. And then I'll do maybe a day of hills also. That's not
Got to.
killing myself, but just, some nice, decent repeats, either at Holy Hills or down.
Yeah. I go to Holy Hills as well. So
Oh yeah,
I think
it's
I've
a good
seen you
route.
over there. So
Yeah, Javier drags me along too quickly on that. Although he'll say that it's the opposite, and I'm dragging him. So we agree to disagree on that.
that's funny. Now, your 50 miler that you won, any stories that you kind of want to, you think about, as you kind of were running it? Like, I don't know, anything you want to highlight?
Uh,
Because like for me, like if I know I'm going to win it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay ahead, or I'm going to stay with this person, or I don't know. You kind of,
yeah, so that one was kind of funny. I mean, it was a small group,
yeah.
so I mean, it was not a huge race, but there were at one point three of us that were close together, and two women, including myself, and one guy. And then I think it was kind of one of those where at the end of one loop, they were getting more food or messing with their
Yes.
headlamps, and I took off. And then I didn't see them for a really long time. So I knew that I was ahead, but I had no idea by how much.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty hard course. They've changed it. I think it's actually a little easier now than it was for that particular race.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I don't think they even do the 50 miler anymore, but the course overall, I think, doesn't have quite as many river crossings and
Yeah.
craziness as the one I
They
did
had to
it.
change that from my understanding.
Mhm.
Little
But yeah, it
flooded
was
or
a pretty
something.
tough course, so I was definitely slowing down. I mean, it was considerably slower than the Rocky 50 that I had
Yeah.
done,
It's not as
in
flat.
February. No, definitely not. So, but then it was kind of one of those where at one point, I think I had maybe crossed over a river, and I heard somebody yelling, and I glanced back and I could see the other woman. And at that point, it was one of those funny things where, in your head, you're like, oh, it's just, I'm so tired. I've been
Yeah.
out here so long. Like, and then you get that shot of adrenaline. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh,
I
she's
gotta
so
win.
close. And so
Yeah.
the last
Yeah.
like 2 miles, I just took off, just
That's awesome.
went straight through an aid station.
So Megan,
Just
you're saying you're pretty competitive then a little bit.
yes and no. I used to be incredibly competitive in my
Makes
first
sense.
track life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Well, I mean, how else
almost
do
to
you
an
get to,
unhealthy extent to
but how else
competitive.
do you get to run in college, right? Like
Right.
you have to be pretty competitive and obviously, talented, but, to be able to run in college. I mean, that's just the reality. If
Yeah.
you're not competitive, then you're like, then you probably wouldn't be in college running,
Right.
you know?
That is definitely true. But I think it's actually been really nice in the distance stuff is
Yeah.
that For the most part, I mean, yes, I've won a few smaller races here and there, and that's really fun, and I love it.
Yeah.
But most races I do, I'm not necessarily in it to win it. I'm never going to be fast enough to win a decent sized marathon or anything like that. So
Right.
you're really much more so than in my younger years. I'm more concerned with myself and just,
Yes.
getting a PR or doing the best I can for that day. And it's certainly more relaxing than just constantly feeling the need to
Yeah.
win. And
Sure.
it's, I mean, yes, it was really fun winning the 50 and it's been fun winning a couple others, but it's for the most part, that's not my concern
That's
with
not
it.
what you're necessarily in. But I mean, you have a lot of opportunity to win masters now. I mean,
True, true.
you're
For
early.
something, I don't know. There are so
Yeah,
many fast runners
I
around
know,
here.
but trust me, like if you're pretty fast as a 40-year-old, you have a lot of opportunity to win, even road races, right? So I've seen it. My wife wins up sometimes.
Oh,
Like
yeah. That's
so. I remember one time we were in this 5K. There was 1,000 women in it, and she won the whole thing, like as a
that's
woman was.
amazing.
She didn't just win a master. She won. She beat everybody. She was well. It's just. It's like there was 1,000 other women.
Yeah.
Oh
That's
yeah,
that's a
and you
pretty
won.
big race.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, that's a big field. That's amazing.
so point is, it's like you have opportunity to win some races in the future. Especially from a master's standpoint, because you're just fast. I mean, that's just the reality too. So you do the 50 miler, you win it. That's awesome. And then you're like, oh, I
Mhm.
got to do a 100 miler.
Yes. Well, I already had my eye on Brazos
All right.
Bend
Okay,
in
got it.
December. So that was
You've already been to
the
it.
Dino Valley was about 6 weeks before. And so I said, it's my test. If it goes
Okay,
well, I'll do the 100.
went pretty well.
And yeah, it went well. So yeah, signed up. And that first 100 miler, I can't explain it, but it went insanely well.
Wow, nobody ever
Yeah,
says that. That's awesome.
I know. I was so lucky. I mean, I was telling my friends that, it didn't really hurt that much until I was 9 miles from the finish. And they're like, 9 miles? They made it
It's not
91
bad.
miles.
I mean, you could
Like,
do
yeah,
anything in nine
you said
miles.
percentage wise, right?
Yeah,
But I had a
great.
friend who paced there, which really helped too. And yeah, I just, I just kind of went out and just hit a nice steady pace. It was the first run I ever did with music.
Wow.
Yeah,
The
I
whole
didn't start
thing?
with it at the beginning. I ran maybe 30 miles or so without it. And then I told myself, okay, as a reward, as something to, bump up my energy, I'll put music on. And I was shocked at the difference it made.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I got the music in, and then all of a sudden I found myself down in the nines, and I was like, whoa, nope, it's too much. Yeah. So then I found the music really helped. But yeah, it went really well. I ended up second,
Okay.
but by about 4.5 hours, because I don't know if you know who Maggie Goodrill is, but she's
Yeah, I've
a
heard of
very elite runner who was down there. So I was second woman, but by
for
like an
helps.
entire marathon.
But that's 100 miles. Like, I mean, whatever, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
can you talk about the support that when I say support, did you have like a crew crewing you at all? And what that means and things like that?
I did. So for that one, well, my husband has been at most of my long races, which
Yeah.
is, I mean, he's the best. He's really
It's
supportive,
awesome.
and yeah, he's great. He's a fantastic crew. And then I also actually at that one, my in-laws live not too far from there. So my parents and my in-laws were also out there for quite a bit
Right.
of it. They didn't stay. My in-laws didn't stay through the very
It's
end
a
of the
long
race
time.
because it didn't end until
Yeah.
1 or 2 in the morning. But
Yeah.
yeah, they were out there and cheering, which was really nice. And then one of my friends from Dallas went down to pace me, and he paced the last 32 miles, I think, which was, yeah, so very, very helpful and nice of him.
So I
I've
have
done it.
to,
I've done about half of them with pacers, about
okay.
half of my hundreds with pacers and about half without.
How many have you done?
I've done 6 100 milers and then 2 backyards that were over
Okay.
that.
Just a quick story because my wife she attempted her first 100 miler at Rocky, somewhat, I don't remember what it was, 15, 16, 17, I don't know, somewhere over there. And I said, oh, I'll pace some of it, like the 20-mile loop or whatever that was.
Ugh.
And it was nighttime and, she was walking after 60 or something. She's like, yeah, I'm done running. So we walked that loop and it literally took us 7 hours and we didn't finish. But I
Oh,
remember, she did, I think 70-ish, 70 something or whatever. And I think no, 75, I think, because I walked 15 of it. But I remember being on my feet, just me as a pacer-ish, being on my feet for 7 hours was just, and at night was really difficult for me because we walked the whole thing. And then I started trying to jog like at 6 hours in. And I was like, I'm sure glad you're not jogging because I don't think I could, you know?
the
Um,
longer you walk, the harder it is
yeah,
to start jogging
I,
again.
I found it very difficult. And the other thing was I realized I'm never going to pace her again because, you know, one of the things she did was like I was getting something out of the pack or whatever. She goes, hey, can you give me this thing? I go, yeah, just hold on a second. She goes, you're my mule. You need to get me. She's not usually that like that, but she was at that time. And I was like, hold on, I'm going to get it.
Yeah, there's definitely some stress that hits you during those races. I think most people that have crewed or paced just have to know that you have to have a little bit of thick skin. The runner is usually, often not in the best
That's right.
mindset later in the race when they're hurting,
And
and you
that's
have to just
fine.
they say with a grain of salt and
And I
try
did,
try
but
not Emily.
the other thing is if I'm going to pay somebody, just don't be my wife, just let's find somebody
Right.
else to do it, you
Yes,
know?
yes.
So
And my husband does run, but
yeah,
not to the extent that I do. He's done one full and several halves, but
yeah,
usually at a pace where he just wants to be. He did push it in the full. He got under 4 hours, and
nice.
I trained him while I was pregnant, and it was fixed.
I love that.
It's great.
Oh
I mean,
my gosh.
the last time we
I
could really
trained
run.
him, but I was pregnant, so I could
Yeah,
stay with it.
yeah, because it was really nice because it kept me running a
Yeah,
decent
I love it.
mileage, but at a
Yeah.
slower pace, which was just kind of perfect. And it was the last time we could really run together a lot since it's a lot harder with a kid to both get out there. So
It's got to
yeah,
be a lot harder now, because do you have just one or?
just one.
Okay.
He's 4.5.
Okay. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, it's probably enough, right? I don't know. You want
yeah.
another one, but
Oh no, I'm quite done. One is plenty.
okay.
He's adorable, but he's plenty.
Yeah.
Uh, it it's harder to run together, but I mostly run just really early in the morning and get back, when they usually haven't even been up too long. And
That's
then he'll
good.
go do a few miles after I get back, but it's actually great. He's enough of a runner that he really
Understands.
understands running, and he wants to run with me sometimes and do social runs, and but he doesn't understand sometimes why I do the insane things I do. But
Yeah. That's why we're on this podcast is to try to figure out the mind of Megan.
about running in general. He's very good, but he's not trying to do the same kind of
Yeah.
mileage day in and day out as I am, because that would be really hard. I have no idea how we would both be doing 70-mile weeks. That would be
It's
really
like,
difficult.
well, it's one of us going to have to give, and, it's going to be you. No. No, it's funny because I do believe that, when you're a runner like that and you put in those miles, like my wife, she's always been for 15 years, she's been uninjured and just focused in on different things, and she runs a lot of miles. And, I certainly understand. I mean, I run not as many, but maybe 30 to 40 at times. And, having that spouse or partner that understands of your training schedule, why you do things, maybe they don't understand why you do it, but,
Right.
understand it. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's so important in a relationship,
Mhm.
you know?
It is. It's
Um,
really
so it's good that you have a supportive person that can really help you through some of that. And when
yeah.
it's watching the kid or just like, yeah, see ya, you know, um,
And
you've
we
gone
try
for
I
4 hours to
try to get
run.
him Sunday mornings. I try to take Sundays off most of the time so that, I get Saturday mornings for my long runs, and he gets Sunday morning to go either run or disc golf or golf, whatever he wants to do on Sunday morning. So,
Yes, but it's all about, I don't know if compromise is the right word, but just negotiating, say, hey, and agreeing to do that stuff from a relationship. I love it. And I
yeah.
think that's important. Keeps you both happy. So let's fast forward. So now you've done six. Well, now but you've done a lot of you did a few hundreds, certain
Mhm.
marathons, and you're an established runner now. This year you've done some cool things that I think we should talk about because we haven't really got into those yet. You ran Boston in 2023 was your last one, right?
Boston?
Yeah. Is that what you
Uh,
said or
no, 24. This past
okay,
just
so this year. Yeah.
yeah,
Thought I
this year.
saw a thing on your Facebook.
Mhm.
And how'd you do there? What was kind of the
Not as well as I wanted. It was
yeah.
a warm year.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was.
yeah, I really did train hard for that one, and I was
Oh,
hoping to get a significant PR, and I probably should have just adjusted expectations because it
Probably.
was such a warm day. But instead, I was stubborn and decided to go for it, and it did not go particularly well. I mean, it was still fun. I had a wonderful weekend, and it wasn't a horrible time, but it just was certainly not what I was looking for.
Well, I
But
think disappointment's part of running
oh,
sometimes,
yeah. Well, and that's the nice thing about already having other crazy stuff
Yeah.
that I was signed up for. It was like, okay, well, Boston didn't go that well, but now I have the Tahoe Rim 100 miler in July, and that was my first mountainous one.
So, yeah, I want to talk about that. I saw that on there, and you mentioned that it was really difficult, because it was what, 18,000 feet, 100, was it 100 miles or? Okay.
It was 100
Let's-
miles, yes.
Okay. Tell me about it. Yeah, your first mountain race.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. It was
Yeah, of course.
the prettiest race I've ever done by far. I mean, at times
Yeah.
you could see wildflowers and multiple lakes, including Lake Tahoe and mountain peaks all at the same time. And it was phenomenal. And it was really well organized. It was an awesome, awesome race. However, at mile 40 and again at mile 70, you have to go literally climb up a black diamond ski slope. And
Nice.
it is brutal. So
I've seen
I was
this.
through mile 40, I was cruising. I'd been going up the hill, hiking up the hills.
Isn't
And
as bad as everybody says.
yeah, I was like, oh man,
This
there's
is
no
great.
problem. This is
Mhm.
great. And then all of a sudden I got to that hill and the altitude just hit
Ugh.
me and I could barely move. And I had to just sit
Stress.
at the top at an aid
Uh,
station, but I made it to
Yeah.
an aid station, but I had to just sit there for like 30 minutes and try
Wow.
to get some color back in my face, try to
Mm.
get a little food down. I mean, it was tough. I went from mile 40 being like, this is the best, to mile 42 going, I
It's
don't
the
know
worst.
if I'm going to make it through this race. It was very, very
From 40 to 42, that's just 2 miles up, basically, right?
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. It's like 2
Yeah.
miles straight up. And it almost did me in, but I,
So
finally
you've
felt.
never done anything like that before then?
No, I mean, I've done hilly
Yeah.
100 milers, but nothing at altitude.
Got it.
You
It's
know,
the
I've
altitude that
done
kicked your butt.
It was the altitude. It really wasn't the climbing, actually. Even by the end,
Mm.
I could hike up pretty quickly. I could still run the downhills. My legs were fine from a lot of hill training I'd done here, but the altitude,
Had to
I
do
don't
a lot of people in,
yeah, I'm
so
still not entirely sure how to train for that. But yeah,
I don't
I mean,
either.
I made it.
It's in Texas.
I started walk jogging and then eventually could run again. And then the second time I had to go up it, it was at night, which helped some, I think. It wasn't quite as hot at least. So,
Oh, that was-
and you couldn't see the very top. So maybe mentally it was just like, okay,
Well,
just
partly it's a mental game, I'm sure, you know.
Mhm.
And
But
so,
that one was crazy because I'd been running. I found another guy from Texas actually who lives up in McKinney,
well,
and the two of us and then one other guy ended up running together through a lot of the night, which really helped. But
I'm
then we
sure.
got to that mile 72 and I was mentally just not ready to climb it. I just sat and I was eating and they left and
Oh,
uh,
man.
telling my husband, like, this almost killed me the first time. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it up again. And a random guy heard me and said, hey, this might be a little weird, but I'm just an extra pacer. I came to pace a friend, but I was a backup and she doesn't actually need me. So I don't have anyone to pace. Do you want me to run with you
Mm-hmm.
the last 28 miles of this race? I was like, really? Yes, please.
That's
So
awesome.
this random guy ended up pacing me the last 28 miles. And honestly, it would have been a lot harder without him. He was really good about, he would say, how are your legs? I was like, oh, they're actually okay. Okay, well then anytime we hit a downhill, I'm going to tell you to run. So it was
Okay.
slightly downhill. It's downhill. Just go.
Let's just
And
go.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
the beauty
no.
about trail running is that,
Mhm.
you have people like that will come out and help. You get
Yeah.
to, I mean, like you said, I know this guy, you probably know him, Steve Griffin. He'll do that.
Oh,
I don't know if you know
that's
him
so
well, but
I don't
What's
know
it-
him well. I know who he is, but I don't
yeah,
know him.
he'll be in like Arkansas or whatever if he's not racing or running, which I don't know that he races anymore. He just runs it. He'll do a lot of pacing, and then if somebody decides, maybe they don't finish or whatever, somebody else needs help, he'll just go in
Yeah.
and help them and pace them. So
That's so nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
trail racing is an awesome community. I mean, so is road running.
yeah, I mean,
They both are, but
it's funny
I-
is I think it's
Oh.
kind of this myth, in my opinion, or misunderstanding is is that trail running is the most amazing thing, and it is, and it's different. It's definitely a different atmosphere. But road racing, they're just snobs, blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, no, no, no. I mean, I'm around a lot of wonderful people in both the road community and the trail community.
Oh, definitely. I do most of my training with, really, most of the people I train with, sure, there are a few that also dabble in trails, but most
Yeah.
of them are pretty purely road runners.
Mhm.
And they're some of my best friends. Like running is such an awesome social release as well as, an exercise. So yeah, I certainly don't. I don't think that road runners are necessarily always just way
Yeah,
too competitive and not as friendly. I don't find that at all. I love trail runners, but I think road runners.
maybe that's what it is they think, road runners are more competitive than,
Mhm.
I don't know, when I'm on a trail, I'm just as competitive as I would be on the road.
Yeah,
But
I think there's a lot of overlap. I don't.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I do both. I don't.
I do too. I mean, I haven't done as much trails over the last 2 years. I've done a few, but you do this 100-miler and then you decide, hey, look, I need to do something even harder. And I don't know if it's harder, but you do this backyard race, which we'll talk about, which love, but you did 170 miles, 75 miles, and you won the whole thing. How's that work?
This year, yes. So this was actually my second time doing that exact same race. I did
Okay.
it the year before,
Yeah.
and I made it 162 and a half miles.
Wow.
So 39 hours. I don't know if do you know the backyard ultra format?
Sort of. Why don't you just tell us?
So you can only you run 4.167
I
miles
do.
on the hour every hour. And it's an odd number because it adds up to exactly 100 miles in 24 hours.
Yeah.
That's why it's such an odd count.
Yeah. No, makes sense. Makes sense.
So it's
Who
kind
puts
of,
on who puts on that race?
so there are a bunch of them now, actually.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
original one, obviously there have been last person standing style races for a long time, but
Yeah.
this very specific format with these rules was created by Lazarus Lake, who is the same guy that does Barclays.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, sadistic guy. That's why.
It is.
So the very first one was called Big's Backyard
Mm.
in Tennessee. From there, it just spread. And so now this format is popular around the world. And yeah, it's really cool. They still do. So in even years, they do team championships.
Yeah.
So they have 15 people from your country running in one spot. So 15 people would be running in Tennessee for the US.
Okay.
But then in Belgium, they would be running a race at the exact same time. And in Australia, they'd be running a race at the exact same time. And in, 60 other countries.
Yeah.
And then
That's pretty cool.
you add up all of the yards, what they call them yard, but all of the loops from your team, and the total wins the team championship. So it's
Okay.
kind of an individual race and a team race at the same
Yeah.
time.
That's
And then
pretty cool.
in the odd years, they just have an individual championship
So you
there.
went to Tennessee to do this.
No. I want to
Okay.
go to Tennessee. This is
You
a
wanted to do that
very
one.
roundabout way of saying, like, it was created there and now they have the championships there.
Okay.
So the one I did in not this year, but the year before in 23, down in Marble Falls, which is put on by Summit, which it's run by this guy, Tucker Edwards. He's awesome. He loves it. You can tell. He's just a great guy. But that year it was a silver ticket, which means whoever won it got to go be on the US team
Got
at the
it.
championships
Oh,
this year.
so close.
Epic. I know. So I made it, all the way 162 and a half miles further than I'd ever gone. But at the end of that race, I was C-shaped, Megan, as my friends like to say. My back cramped up. And so I was like this
Yeah.
and had the ultra lean and could not stand up straight.
No.
And I ran like that for about 5 hours before I decided that was about as much as my body could handle that day.
Yeah.
Between that
Your
and sleep
back hurt for a
deprivation.
while.
Yeah, it was awkward. It wasn't.
That's
Part of me
normal.
thinks
I
I
mean,
could have kept going. Like I wasn't that close to the cutoff, but in the end, it was probably best I just stopped because I didn't want to hurt myself. And the two last guys ended up running for 57 and 58 hours, I think.
yeah,
So 200.
I mean, it wouldn't have been worth it anyways,
Right. I was
So-
probably not going to make it that far
Yeah.
in that race. So yeah. So I was fourth overall the year before. And then I went back this year and it was not a silver ticket race. So no, there
Get
just aren't any right now.
Got
There
it.
aren't any now because of the individual championship thing. Like it's only every other year that they have silver ticket races.
Next year it is.
Yeah. So I'm planning on it. So this year it was not quite as competitive a race, but all it takes is one other person to go really far. And the last 12 hours, it was just me and another woman named Rachel. Just 12
Really?
hours. It was only the two of us.
Yeah.
So
I
if
feel
one
like
of us
women
had
just
experience,
last longer, for the most part.
I mean, I
I'm not saying
think
men don't, but
in this
just
format, it's a lot more even for sure. I
is
mean,
it?
that's
Yeah.
why they don't have gender divisions in backyards.
Yeah.
Like you either win it or you don't.
Yeah.
It's just But
So you went 100. So this other woman,
yeah.
I mean, you just basically stop after she does. Like, do one more loop and you're good?
Yeah, you can't, you're literally not allowed to have the race go any further. Like you can
Makes
only
sense.
run one more loop than your assist runs. The assist is the second place. So she went out. We started hour 42 and she had been looking really strong.
Yes.
She was great. I mean, she was running faster than I was almost every loop. But just the beginning of that loop, she just stopped me and said, I'm turning back. I'm done." And I was honestly shocked, but she said, "Great job. Just finish this loop and then it's yours." So I just, went off.
But she's like, screw it. I'm done.
Yeah. She's like, "I'm out." She was very, very gracious, so sweet the whole time. But I think it sounds like maybe she was having trouble regulating her temperature and,
Yeah. I mean,
I had
who
issues that
knows
I
what's going
wasn't
to happen at
seeing,
that?
of course. But so then I just had one more to run and yeah,
You
it
got
was
it done.
over.
And so how'd you feel after? I mean, like, that's a lot of miles just in one sitting.
It is a lot of miles. I certainly, your legs are tired and
Yeah.
as you would expect, and your body's just off from being up that long. It's kind of hard to get back on a cycle. Although it happened faster than I expected this time, but it's kind of one of those you go back to the hotel. Yeah, it ended at 2 a.m. I think, but then you got to shower and your friends are
Yeah.
there. And
Your
have a
friends are,
beer. And next
it's
thing you
two
know,
o'clock. I mean,
you're going to bed at 4:30 and
oh my gosh,
yeah,
you just went to take a shower and hung out with friends. Oh,
briefly. Oh, yeah.
because if it was me, I'd be like, okay, look, I'm going to bed and I'll see y'all tomorrow, maybe at breakfast. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, and then, we had the hotel later, so I think we stayed in bed till noon,
Okay.
but I woke up at 10:30 or so.
All
I
right.
woke up after
Well,
6 hours. You would think like, "Oh, you're gonna sleep forever," but no, your body's
no,
just
you don't.
tired.
Yeah, that's normal. So, wow, congratulations. That's
Thanks.
pretty darn amazing. I
Yeah,
mean,
it was fun. I think, it's one of those you don't know how far you could have gone. Like, I
okay.
had it in my head that I was going to make it to 200.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I think I could have gone over 48 hours. Now beyond that, I don't know, but we'll hopefully see next year because I'm really hopeful it'll be a silver ticket race again. I mean,
Do you
if
think
not,
you'll,
then here, but
yeah, do you think you'll train even more, like do more miles, or will you just do something similar that you did this last time?
probably pretty similar.
Okay.
I mean, I think my legs were shockingly good this time.
Okay.
I mean, the first year I did it, I was getting, massage gunned all the time. My legs were just really tired pretty early on. And this time I just honestly, until near the very end, I was like, don't even touch my legs. They're
Well,
miraculously good. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know how, but they're not
I'm
hurting.
good.
Just don't even touch them. So
Great story. I
I
love that.
think what I did just, I mean, I think just the year and a half of higher mileage, the cumulative mileage just really, really helped. And I did do more speed work in long runs. This
Okay.
session, I had a friend who was training for CIM
Yeah.
and we're really similar paces. And so I would join him on most of
Some of the
his
speed stuff.
workouts during the long run. And I had been doing some speed during the week, especially in the Boston training
Yeah.
cycle, but then not as much speed when I was training for Tahoe because I was
Just
more
trying
concerned
to,
with hills. I was just like,
yeah.
please, all the elevation, just hills, hills, hills. But then switching over to the speed in the long runs before the backyard, which is fairly flat, I think really just helped my muscles not get nearly as fatigued.
Do you think
So
mixing
I'll
that all,
do something similar
do
this
you think
time.
mixing it up like you do, like road runs, doing some speed, then you go to some mountain runs and don't do speed, and then you go back to this backyard thing, do a little bit of speed, but then also lots of miles, do you think that kind of keeps it more interesting by changing it up like that?
I think so. I think it helps with injury prevention because you have that season in there that you're maybe running a little slower, but really building the strength on the hills and the trails a lot more, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
That was a lot of summer training when you don't really want to be trying to do a ton of speed anyway, because it's Dallas and it's 100 degrees and it's exhausting.
It's hard in
So
the summer.
yeah, so I think having the summer be more of a strength and hill and elevation training, and then going back to the speed, yeah, really was nice. So I'll be doing something similar this year. Actually, I have actually probably the race. I'm signed up for a race that is the one I'm dreading the most, maybe out of any race I've ever done. I signed up for a 24-hour on a track race in February.
Wow. On a
Yeah.
track. Okay.
So that will be interesting.
You
You just
definitely
try to
might
get,
need some speed on that, though.
yeah. Oh, you do. Definitely.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's a weird combination of you have to run really far and fair at a decent clip the whole time. So it's kind of a combination of all the things I've done, and we'll see how it comes together. I've
See,
never
you're
done
you're just changing it up,
Yeah, I like to change it up. But
You
then,
can do 100 in 24 hours.
oh yeah, I
Really?
mean, I
Okay.
certainly hope so. I've done hundreds faster than
100.
that
Got it.
in the past. So I would, yeah. I mean, I would love to do at least 130. That's kind of the
130
minimum
miles.
standard for the
Yeah.
U.S. team. It wouldn't get me on the U.S. team because the U.S. team right now has people who have been running in the 150s, which is
But you
incredible.
kind of want to see where you're at.
Yeah, but I kind of want to see where I'm at, what I can do. But I would
Love that.
hope to get at least 130.
Okay. That'd be fun to watch.
Yeah.
I'll have to get you back on the podcast, talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, that's February 15th. And then very, very exciting. I, after 7 years, got into Western States.
No way. Congratulations.
So
That's
I'll be doing
awesome.
it in June. I'm so excited.
That is so awesome. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations on that.
Thank you. And it's great timing since I finally did a mountain race last year, and I
Yes.
kind of have a
Kind of
slightly better idea of what I'm getting myself into. It makes me feel a little more confident about it. So
tough.
it'll be similar this year. I'll do a fast race and then
Yeah.
a hilly trail race in the summer again, and then the backyard in the fall. So yeah,
You're already booked up. I love it.
I am. I'm booked up for next year.
But I think that's
the ultra.
That's pretty much how that goes anyways. But Megan, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, we spent
Thanks
an
for having
entire
me.
hour actually
Yes.
talking about running. So that
I
was
know.
pretty easy.
Yes, anytime. I can always talk running.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Stetzel. Please rate and review us, and this will be out soon. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.